Hello and welcome to the podcast, Get Rich Without Being a Bitch. And I'm Vanessa Shaw, your host for this journey that we're going to be taking on. Listen, I feel like we're going to be covering some really important topics, especially if you are a woman in business, you want to create wealth on your own terms, and you want to live richly without burning out. In this podcast, I'm going to be sharing topics, strategies, mindset changes that are going to help you shatter glass ceilings, challenge stereotypes, and frankly, be the best version of you so that you can define life and live it on your terms. Welcome. Please make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. Hey superstars, welcome back to another episode of Get Rich Without Being a Bitch. I'm Vanessa Shaw, your host for this journey that we are taking together. I have a question for you today. Answer honestly. Are you sabotaging your financial success? What do I mean by that? Are you doing things that possibly you're aware of that are getting in the way? Or do you think there might be some things that you're unaware of, that you are unconsciously sabotaging getting to that next level? I'm going to break into this today because this is a really, really important concept. Because for those of you listening that have got big dreams and goals inside of you and that desire for more, and you know that you are meant for more, you want to be somebody that is making a big impact in the world. You want to be creating this amazing business that benefits you, your loved ones, and others, having that ripple effect, right? You also want to be building a business that, as business gets better, life gets better too, right? Really, that version of you want it all. Well, here's the thing. When you have big dreams and big goals to fulfill, there will be resistance, whether you are aware of it or not. If you weren't going for the thing, right? If you were just happy, coasting, doing the thing, there's not going to be much resistance, right? Because you're just doing what you've always done. You're going down that same path. But the minute you start to declare that you want something different, you want more than you've currently got today. You want to be more, have more, live more, impact more, enjoy more, right? Whatever that more is for you, there is going to be a part of you that says, red flag. She's wanting to do something different. And my role is to keep her safe and to stop her and slow her down. This is the voice of that internal saboteur, right? You may be aware of it already. As I went into business for myself, again, we're talking many years ago now. Again, I had big dreams of that first business. I started, my life back in Switzerland. I was a stay-at-home mom. I was looking after the kids. I was supporting my husband in his career. And I was very happy. I wasn't questioning, right, anything else. But then I started to go down this path of discovering what it meant to be a life coach, which was how I initially trained. I start to land my first corporate deal, a 6-figure retainer, really good stuff. And as I started to become, more ambitious, tapping into my desires, my dreams for more, and wanting that bigger life and that bigger business, I became really, really aware of my internal saboteur. It was something I hadn't been aware of before. And I didn't share it. I thought it was just me. I felt like I was weird. Like, what was this going on? Like this internal struggle. Does everybody have this? And of course, some people might not be aware of it. Some people aren't going after those big goals, so they don't need to be aware that there's a internal saboteur necessarily. But in my case, all of a sudden, the voice of my internal saboteur was saying, who the heck do you think you are? You're not smart enough. You're not skilled enough in this. You're not, enter whatever it was, pretty enough, thin enough, funny enough, a good communicator. I don't know what the things were, but there were all of these, like, you're not this. It was like the voice of that constant mean girl and inner critic was showing up big time. It had me really doubting my value. That was honestly one of the places where my internal saboteur would just stop me, is it would have me questioning the whole time the value I was bringing to the table. It would have me stuck in, you are just a housewife. That's what you do. That's the role that you play. That's where you're really good. So who the heck do you think you are to be doing this other thing over there and going into business for yourself when you have zero business background? You don't have an MBA. You don't have the qualifications. Like, who the heck do you think you are? So the voice of my internal saboteur just got louder and louder. And there were times when, honestly, I found it really, really paralyzing, until I discovered that that voice is actually quite normal when we're up to big things in the world. And it's a part of that process of the self-development that we need to go on, right? The voice is probably not going to go away forever. But here's the thing, we need to learn how to tame it, how to use it, right, to our advantage, how to be able to say, hey, I'm not listening to you right now. I kind of know exactly what your game is, and your game is here to try and stop me or slow me down. And I'm actually going to be the voice of reason here, and I'm going to have a more powerful voice than yours, because often it is the one that we feed, right, that is going to be the one that really rules and that dominates that game. So if you're listening in today and this is the first time that you're hearing this, know that it's a normal part of that growth process. And it happens when we start to declare what we really want. Now, what was helpful for me back then was really tapping into that self-talk, listening in and understanding how I was first and foremost speaking to myself. Was I being kind? Was I being productive? Was I being constructive? Or was I just allowing this part of me, this voice, to take over that was just constantly the naysayer, and I was feeding it, giving it way too much energy? And I'll share with you, again, I haven't shared this with many people, but one of the processes that I actually went through back then was to name that part of me. And I came up with a name, and it was Freddie. That was, for some reason, it was a male voice. Go figure. Anyway, perhaps because, I don't know. I won't even go down that path. I'd love to hear your thoughts on why it might have been a male voice. But in my case, it was. And I even drew what my internal saboteur, my inner saboteur looked like. And he was like this little dude. He actually looked like the little version of Mario from my kids used to play on whatever that Nintendo game is, Mario Kart. And it was like this mini kind of Mario type figure. And it was almost as if he was like an ankle biter. That was in my mind how I would describe him. But my goodness, he was so powerful. He could be there sort of out of sight, like beneath the height of my knee. And I swear he could start to trip me up in an instant. He knew exactly the things to say to get me stopping or slowing down, right? His role was to instill doubt and fear and anxiety and worry so that I would start to go in a different direction. Now, when I named him, when I drew him, all of a sudden, he somehow seemed less scary. And I was literally able to say at times, Freddie, I know what you're up to here. I've got this. Frankly, you can be quiet. And it took work, right? And it took practice. So tuning in to that self-talk, becoming really aware of it, realizing as a mum back then as well, I wouldn't allow anybody to speak to my kids like that. No way. It was just so limiting. Always the naysayer. And yet I was allowing that to go on inside of myself. So starting to just tune into that self-talk can give you, right, some insight. But here's the other thing that I really want you to think about. If we don't tune into that voice and understand what's going on, there's a whole lot of information that we're missing, right? And it's just potentially sabotaging our progress and our process without us knowing. The other side of this, though, as well, is not only our self-talk. It's also about our identity and who do we need to become? Because in truth, you'll never outperform who you see yourself to be, right? And that was the struggle that I was in. Back then, my identity was tied up in being a housewife. I actually really prided myself on that. I was a stay-at-home mom, loved that role. I supported my husband sort of emotionally, right, in his career, running the home so that everything ran smoothly. He would travel, could come back. We had a great lifestyle. I did really well in that role. And what I didn't realize is that had become a huge part of my identity. And again, I was validated for that role as well. A lot of people in my life back then would say I did that really well. My family, right? My stepfather, my mother, they would give me a lot of validation for that choice. And my whole identity was tied up in it, which meant that when I went out into business and now I've become a business owner, I felt like I was still showing up as the housewife, the stay-at-home mom, right? I hadn't bridged the gap between the version that I was before and the new version of me that needed to show up. So they were kind of like fighting with one another. And it always felt easier because, of course, I'd been in that previous role to keep going backwards. So what I needed to do was to start to redefine myself as the business owner. What does that need to look like? If I'm running a business, what's that part of my identity now? And what are the mindsets that I need to build? I had to own, frankly, the fact that that was now a new part of me. Telling people I run a business, even using those words, right? It wasn't natural for me back then. So starting to just train my own mindset and build that muscle was the first part of it. But then the next part of it was starting to build the new skill sets, right? If I'm a business owner, those are very different skill sets to when I was a stay-at-home mom. Very different. I had to learn about marketing, about sales, about looking at the numbers. If I'm hiring people, whether they were independent contractors, hiring people into the business, vendors, all those different things, these were completely new skill sets for me. When I was running live events, developing a curriculum for a live event, selling from the stage, hiring a team for events to support me. All completely new skill sets that were very much outside of my comfort zone. But they were linked to this new identity that I was building, right? So think about that for yourself, because right now there's a part of you that's where you're at today. I kind of call this small you, and I don't mean that in a demeaning way, but you know that you're wanting to tap into the version of you, that bigger version of you, right? That next level that your vision requires of you. And between those two places, if we imagine there's that smaller version of you and this bigger version of you, there is a gap in between. And that gap is the fertile ground for self-sabotage. Because in that gap, your inner saboteur is now going to throw up all of those things. Like, who do you think you are, right? Get you overwhelmed, get you distracted, have you doubting yourself, get you doing things to either consciously or unconsciously sabotage your progress. So perhaps for example, that you really do need to be working out more. Getting out into nature is the place where you refuel your soul and you feel good, and yet you're not doing it. Right? You know full well that it's actually impeding progress and you don't show up at your best. That is a version of self-sabotage that you actually might be aware of. Right? There are times when I know still to this day, I have to train myself that, all of a sudden I've got a meeting or something that I'm preparing for, and I find myself getting distracted over here, like with that thing that's typically more comfortable. It's like, here we go. I'm not going to give 100% of my focus to the thing that's most important. I'm going over here and doing something else instead. I had to train myself, right? Let's bring myself back, put that focus where it is. Unconscious sabotage, or even, as I say, you might be aware of it. Let's imagine you've got a great big opportunity coming up, a presentation, something that you feel is going to take your business to the next level, or a speaking gig, for example. And yet the night before, instead of, getting a good night's sleep, going through your slides, making sure you're prepped, you're out having perhaps a glass of wine too many with your girlfriends, whatever that can be. There's all these different places that we can sabotage our progress. And you have to understand that that internal saboteur knows how to get you hooked in, right? Knows exactly what to do to slow you down or to stop you. So you've got to start to understand, your own patterns so that you can overcome them. And part of that place is in that gap between the version you are today and the version that you want to be in order to be able to fulfill on your dreams and your vision. So that upgraded mindset, right, is like, how does that next level of you think about things differently compared to the version today? So it might be, again, I'm going to give you practical examples, but perhaps that earlier version, I know that earlier version for me didn't value looking at the numbers in the business, would abdicate responsibility for that. It's like, I've got my bookkeeper, they're taken care of, but I wasn't looking at the reports. I wasn't asking questions. I actually abdicated responsibility for it. That upgraded version is, I need to build those skill sets. I need to be able to understand what my P&L means, what it means, to look at my cash statements and all of these other numbers. I need to actually be the one giving some input to my bookkeeper of how I want those things to be so that they make sense for me and my business, right? So those are some examples there of what are those beliefs, the mindset that we need to upgrade. How do you actually as well engage in different activities? If we keep doing the same thing, we're going to get the same results. Yet some of us are still doing the same things, expecting different results, right? And some smart person once said that's the definition of insanity. So again, are they different activities that we need to be engaging in? Or does our attitude as well need to shift around them? So like energetically, we're different in terms of how we're approaching things. So this is all these places of in the gap, right? Where we are in the gap between who we are and who we want to be. And it's this fertile ground for self-sabotage. And particularly it happens around finances. So I want to break that even further down. And it's amazing how at times your mind can really, really play tricks on you. It can make you think that there's doom and gloom, right? And everything is not working, and get your eye off the ball and away from the things that you really need to be focused on, so that you get into this place of, oh my gosh, this isn't working. It's negative, right? It's got you going down a different path. So in terms of the finances, I'm going to give you some clues of places to look where you could be financially self-sabotaging. Are you if you're sending out invoices or billing, are you doing it on time? This is a place we see it a lot. It's like there's money to be collected in your business, yet not sending out the invoices or bills on time and or discounting, writing work off. Are you making it way too difficult for clients to even pay you? For example, you're not taking online payments or credit cards or transfers, right? Are we making it too difficult? Do you know you should be increasing your fees? You're just so solid now in the value that you bring. You've got a lot of expertise. You haven't raised your fees in a long time, and yet you still haven't done it. Right? Again, a place where financially making, sabotaging and making life too difficult for you. Are you looking at your numbers? That's the place I see with a lot of women. They're not even looking to see where they're at revenue-wise, profit-wise, understanding their P&L, understanding what the budget looks like. And you don't even know what you should be looking for. And again, that's totally fair. I didn't either. But if we're not even asking questions or getting some guidance, right, there's so much information out there as to what should I be looking for, like building up those skill sets, you're going to be, again, unconsciously or consciously sabotaging your success. So many places having team members that are underperforming, they're not delivering what you need them to, hiring contractors or vendors, again, that don't deliver, right? Again, these are places where it's going to affect you financially. Are you yourself out of alignment with how you expect others to show up for you? That's a place of a lot of unconscious self-sabotage, I see. So what does that look like? You expect people to invest in you, and yet invest in you and your services, and yet you wouldn't invest the similar amounts. And I don't mean the same services, but you're very like, no, I'm not going to make those sorts of payments. I'm not going to make those sorts of investments. So we're out of alignment with what we expect people to do. That's one place. Equally so, if you have got vendors that are not delivering and not supporting you, and yet you're paying them and you are not having the conversations for how to, either to let's get those expectations back on track, or we start to give a warning that with, 30 days, we're going to have to terminate if this isn't turned around, you are sabotaging your own success there. Lots of different places can also be in terms of you're not being in integrity, right? With honoring your own financial commitments. And I know you might say, well, how am I sabotaging my success? Well, if you're not in integrity with paying some of your bills on time, making excuses, whatever that looks like, not honoring contracts, it's out of integrity to expect other people to do the same for something that you're not willing to do. And for most of the women that we work with, they feel so uncomfortable knowing that they're not keeping their side of the deal, that they'll sabotage themselves. I've heard of women as well that will say they've got these bigger opportunities coming through. They're starting to feel perhaps a little bit intimidated by them. And all of a sudden, they're not returning those calls. They're not getting proposals out on time. There's so many different places that it can show up in your business. The number one place to look is, where are those things that you are avoiding? I was saying that I share with our clients, it's like avoidance is not the path to abundance. And if you know that you are avoiding looking at things, those tough conversations, those places where, you are going to feel uncomfortable. It feels uncomfortable when we are moving from one version of ourselves to the next. We're having to let go of certain beliefs, the way we've been, some of the things that we've held true. We're having to work on new skill sets that now feel uncomfortable. We're having to be a beginner again in some places. It's going to feel uncomfortable, but if we keep avoiding that discomfort, we're not going to get ahead. So I hope this starts to give you just some good insights today on where might you be financially sabotaging yourself. You're avoiding certain things. We've shone the light on many, many places. And again, definitely a place to be looking at in your business, looking at it personally as well. If you want to get rich, get ahead, live a better life, really become the person as well that you are really proud of being, because you know that you've grown, you've put in the effort, and you deserve, right? You deserve more. You deserve that next level of success because you have been doing the work and really putting it in. This is a very important episode. So look at those places where you can be in a place of avoidance. Start to ask yourself the question. One of my power questions is always, when I look at the next level of business leader that I need to be, is asking myself, how does she show up? How is she showing up differently today? What are some of the belief systems? How does she speak to herself? How is her day structured? What are those new activities that she's engaging in? What are those new skill sets where she's more competent? It starts to give me some really vital clues. As always, superstars, I hope you have found this helpful today. Valuable conversation. I would love it if you would leave a positive review. Let me know what you're loving, what's really helpful. And don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to share this as well with other women in business. I am sharing here core concepts that we work with our clients on. You're getting it for free, and you know other women that could really benefit from this content as well. So don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and I can't wait to catch you on the next episode.